SpaceX had to close down their testing area around the orbital launch mount due to some worrying damage in the concrete pad that held up the entire structure. As you can probably imagine, there is no magic concrete that can withstand. For the third time in 3 months, SpaceX has fully assembled Starship 24 and Super Heavy Booster 7 after another period of separate tests, repairs and modifications measuring around 120 meters, approximately 390 featuring tall from ship tip to booster tail. The fully stacked rocket is again the largest ever assembled compared to the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rocket. SpaceX currently operates Starship is far larger. It's also meant to be fully reusable, while the Falcon family, which extends its orbital upper stage, is roughly 80 reusable if SpaceX can meet its technical goals. Starship could eventually cost around a magnitude less to launch than Falcon while carrying roughly 5 to 20 times more payload per launch. In short, it could revolutionize the cost of access to orbit combined with orbital refilling, the ability to transfer propellant between Starships reusable. Starships could also radically exceed Falcon 9 or even Falcon Heavy's expendable performance. But first, SpaceX needs to make sure that Starship can reach orbit at all. Compared to Ship 20 and Booster 4, earlier prototypes that were also fully stacked a few times in 2021 and early 2022. Before their retirement, Ship 24 and Booster are closer to supporting Starship's first orbital launch attempt. After their latest upgrade and adding Raptor engine shielding in the high bay or full stack milestone, they could be just a few major tests away from being cleared for flight, according to CEO Elon Musk and a NASA official. The last major standalone test between Booster 7 and flight readiness is a full 33-engine static fire. Together, B7's 33 Raptor 2 engines could produce up to 7,600 tons, 16.7 million pounds of thrust at sea level, likely making Starship the most powerful rocket stage in the history of spaceflight using the same launch mount that Starship Booster is expected to attempt to complete some of the riskiest and most challenging tests SpaceX has ever conducted. At its Starbase rocket development facilities, the schedule for the testing is unclear. But after an unusually drawn-out period of qualification testing, Super Heavy Booster 7 could soon attempt a full static fire test of all 33 of its Raptor 2 engines either before or after the crucial test. SpaceX is also expected to install Ship 24 on top of Super Heavy B7 for Starship's first full-stack wet dress rehearsal. A wet dress rehearsal is a routine test conducted before a rocket launch and is generally designed to simulate every aspect of a launch save for engine ignition and liftoff. Most importantly, that involves fully filling the rocket with propellant and passing all of the checks the same rocket would need to pass to be cleared for launch. First full-stack WDR will test Starbase launch facilities just as much as Booster 7 and Ship 24. Ultimately, if that testing produces the results SpaceX wants to see, CEO Elon Musk says that Starship could attempt its first orbital launch. The company has already performed multiple test flights with Starship prototypes. They are now getting ready to conduct the first full-scale orbital flight test with a Super Heavy rocket. Super Heavy is designed to propel Starship to orbit powered by up to 29 methane-fueled Raptor engines. It is set to become the world's most powerful and largest rocket in history. The most revolutionary rockets in the history of spaceflight, and its first launch went off perfectly, but in order for this first test flight to be a success, SpaceX has to be sure that the 29 Raptor engines on the bottom of Super Heavy will fire without any significant problems. So far, SpaceX has only performed a few pressure tests on Booster for their most complete Super Heavy booster. These tests usually involve filling the booster's tanks with cryogenic liquid to simulate the temperatures and pressures it will experience during a flight, but the most realistic test that needs to be completed before Booster 4 ever lifts off will be a complete static fire using all 29 of its engines in order to limit the size of the explosion. SpaceX has done before. When Booster 4 lights up all 29 of its engines, it will produce a level of thrust 7 times greater than the Falcon 9. And this number is set to increase as the Raptor engine is upgraded. The only other rocket that comes close to this is the Soviet N-1 rocket. It was a similar size to Starship and also featured a similar layout of 30 engines. Now SpaceX will hopefully be able to shut down a failing engine before it turns into a grenade. But it's not just the rocket itself that could cause problems during a static fire. The entire launch infrastructure surrounding the rocket plays a crucial role in keeping the rocket safe. Normally launch pads use a flame diverter to deflect the intense exhaust away from the rocket and the launch pad. But SpaceX is taking a much riskier approach with Starship. The current design of the orbital launch pad in Boca Chica features no flame diverter at all, and the booster sits just 20 meters above the ground, and so when the engines fire, an enormous amount of heat and energy is sent directly onto the concrete below. In the past this has caused problems for SpaceX, but has been an upgrade to the berm that separates the launch apparatus from the tank farm. This dense structure made of compacted dirt and concrete is what protects the tank farm from the effects and debris rated by those static fire tests. It looks like the berm has been reinforced with extra concrete and is taller than it was previously. The engineers appear to still be working on routing drainage troughs and other general plumbing through that area, but it looks like it's almost complete. There's also been some repairs made under and around the orbital launch mount, with large chunks of concrete being thrown back up into the engine bay, completely destroying engines. Shift 24 could fly on a future booster if B7 does not pass or survive proof testing. More likely than not, Ship 24 will be removed from Booster 7 after WDR testing, freeing Super Heavy for one last round of standalone static fire testing. If that testing clears, Booster 7 Ship 24 will be reinstalled, possibly for the last time. In the spirit of caution, SpaceX has even taken the unusual step of stress testing Starship's orbital launch mount with a custom jig in the first week of 2023. SpaceX used the jig to load pairs of the orbital launch mount 20 hold-down clamps with hundreds of tons of ballast, ensuring that they can withstand the immense weight of a fully fueled Starship. Proof tests of Super Heavy B4 and B7 have likely subjected the old to 2,000+ tons of force, but a full Starship will weigh more than double the maximum weight the OM has experienced to date. Plenty of risk remains in SpaceX's trading speed for caution, but this extra cautious step has likely reduced the risk of the launch mount structure failing during wet dress and static fire testing. Nonetheless, Musk also implied that a full stack WDR and 33 engine static fire would, but that will likely also require placing at some point. That's just the nature of the beast. If you look at the beating NASA's infrastructure took after the SLS launch, you'll see more examples of how difficult it is to build something that can take the sorts of force that these new rockets can dish out. These super heavy rockets are pushing the limits of what our infrastructure can take, and speaking of pushing launch gear to the limit, SpaceX is also taking this time to test their orbital launch mount to see if it can take the weight of a fully loaded Starship. Normally this sort of testing would have been done a while ago, but SpaceX, knowing that they weren't going to have to test a fully fueled and stacked vehicle anytime soon, decided to just push forward with testing before trying a fully fueled Starship stack. It's just convenient. The Booster 7 test fire exposed damage that required a pause in OM testing anyhow, so it all worked out in the end. SpaceX technicians can test each axis of the OM for up to 250 metric tons of force, which is about 110% of their expected load, to allow for an additional safety factor. Probably be completed in a few weeks in September 2022. What is clear is that SpaceX is more committed than ever before to avoiding a catastrophic failure during Starship's first orbital launch attempt. While hardware challenges continue to trump paperwork, an FAA launch license is another significant hurdle standing between SpaceX and Starship's orbital launch debut. SpaceX and the FAA are in the middle of hammering out the details of such a license, which is partially contingent upon the completion of dozens of mitigation measures. Because Starship's unprecedented size elevates the risk it could pose to local residents, it's likely that that license is also contingent upon results from ground tests and will be one of the last gates to be lifted. SpaceX has 3 windows that could be used for B7S24 full stack testing this week. CEO Elon Musk says that Starship could be ready for its first orbital launch attempts as early as late February or March 2023. Elon Musk gives yet another update to the orbital launch timeline. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.